My early education I was passionate about for many years, and still am, but in a different way, was theater. And I was a theater major at Smith and so forth, and I taught theater after that for a number of years. And really what that has sort of developed into and morphed into is storytelling. So for the last, I guess, 20, 25 years, my subject has been in different forms, but has been really helping people change their relationship to death. And
Okay.
that all came out of my work at Harlem Hospital as a volunteer with the HIV kids way back in the 80s when that HIV and AIDS was brand new and there were no protocols, there were no cures, or and the kids were dying because we had no idea how to heal them. It's really a denial of life because you can't have life without death. You can't have death without life. So I started doing research, and that's worked into my first book. Some folks say it was a collection of folk tales from around the world and throughout time about life, death, and beyond. Right now, one of the things I've been doing for the last couple of years is death cafes,
I've
which are
heard
just
about that. That's
yes,
awesome.
they were started in Switzerland by a therapist about maybe 8 years ago or something like that, and then they were picked up in London by a fellow who started a website called Death Cafe, and people who host death cafes all over the world. What it is really a place where people can go. Sometimes they're in people's homes. Sometimes they're places like libraries or neutral places. Sometimes churches sponsor them. But they are just conversations, people who are curious and want to be able to talk about death. It might be something, a death in their family that has affected them, or it might be they have a dear friend who is struggling with some condition. All kinds of reasons people come. Just they want to be able to talk about death in an environment that is open and respectful. There's really a need to be able to drop this fear of death, because fear of death is the equivalent of fear of life, and it actually leads to a great deal. It leads to war, and it leads to violence, and it leads to death, more death. All life does it. So it's not exactly, it's not a human condition. Every form of life has its time, and it gives over its life to something else. So life is in service of life. It's really, and that's the storytellers, stories that have been told for centuries and centuries and centuries about these things, and most of them don't have any author because they're just folk tales. They've been passed down from one person to another, and long before writing, and just a way to understand something more deeply. I'm here in New York, and there are lots of things going on here. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last year or so is that a lot more people are talking about death, and I'm going to be doing a couple of workshops at the IONS conference in Chicago next month on death cafes. And then later in October, I'm going to be doing Death Cafe gathering at the Parliament of World Religions. And the thing about a Death Cafe, it's not rooted in any one tradition. It's not rooted in Christianity or Buddhism or anything. You can bring that with you, and that's very, that can be very important. I can't exactly remember. I think I just got an email about it a couple, 2, 3 years ago, whenever it was, and thought, well, that sounds interesting, and I decided to show up.
From what I remember in one of the living room dialogues that I was at, you seem to know a great deal about the earth and the environment. So what is it that pushed you towards the care for the earth?
Well, it's hard to say exactly. I grew up, I was a young kid during World War II, and we lived at the time outside the city. We didn't live in the city at all. But there was such an emphasis during that period in the 40s of being more aware of what's on around you. For instance, we saved everything. That was one of the things that we were We were saving tin foil. We were saving that. Everybody had a victory garden, for instance, which was a little plot wherever you were living, planting your own vegetables, so that you had fresh vegetables. Now, it was a very limited understanding, but it started early in the sense of being conscious of the impact of human life on the larger environment. In fact, the word environment hadn't even been, it may have existed in the world, but it was not in common use back in the 40s, as I recall. And so, that continued. By the 60s, maybe, I was on the board of a school, and I was on the board along with the head of Greenpeace, which was a fairly new organization at that time. And so I got to, just talk to him and get to know him and appreciate what he was doing. It was very different from what we were doing together. But the point is, it was giving over one's life to being conscious of our impact on the planet and environmental impact. And so I continued, and then I became involved with the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and of course that's all about exploring consciousness. And when you start doing that, you realize, oh my God, I never thought of myself in that context before. So just opening up and waking up to other things other than one's own little world has been a process. And of course, more and more and more in recent decades, where we realize that we have to change our ways in many, many ways, because we're in danger of becoming extinct as a species. One of the things we do here in New York is we compost our garbage. The city does this. It's absolutely wonderful. And when I heard about that, I jumped up and gathered up all my food scraps and took them. You have to take them to the places where they collect them. But this is, I don't know whether other cities do this. I imagine they do. But it's really something for a city the size of New York City to have set that up and realize that. And there are lots and lots and lots of people who show up with their own garbage every week. And plus we, recycle a lot of other things. But just that, going back to nature, connecting with the natural world and the consequences of our own behavior, I think is important.
For someone who just learned about the environmental crisis, what recommendation can you give him or her?
Well, I think they need to, they're just new to the whole subject. They need to inform themselves more deeply. I think they need to read some books and listen to some people. There are people online all the time. They're amazing information that's out there. But if I had not known about this, since I was a child, in the sense of little by little becoming more aware and involved in my impact on the larger environment, if I hadn't had that experience and I was just hearing about it here at this point, I would, I'd want to inform myself. And so I think that would be the first step. And then I think I would be active. I would take action. Things that, there are lots of things that individuals can do. It seems so overwhelming, the whole subject of how we interact with the larger world. It seems like nothing will ever change, but it is changing, and it is, people are participating. Not everybody, of course, but this is how anything changes. It starts with one person, and then other people talking to other people, and so forth and so on. So I think the first thing is to get involved.
Yeah, that's a good one. And what specifically about the environment are you passionate about?
I don't know. I'm passionate about trying to help all of it be more, all aspects of being aware of the environment, and not trying to manipulate the environment. I think that's a mistake, that we think that we can control everything and do whatever we want, and who cares about the other systems. That's how we've been behaving for quite a few centuries, and I think more and more people are maybe aware for the first time that we have to work within the systems that already here, the other natural systems that exist, and we have planet warming, and this is pretty tremendous consequence of our ignoring the way the planet systems function. And so we're now beginning to understand that there are consequences to this sort of ignoring of natural systems, natural environmental systems. So I think it doesn't matter. Some people are interested in weather and weather conditions. Some people are interested in other things. I mean, it doesn't matter really what you take, what you feel passionate about, but I just think one wants to stay with it, and not in an angry way. Some people get so angry because they feel frustrated or whatever. But I think really, whatever we do, we need to do it from a place of love and caring and acceptance rather than being hostile, because that's so off-putting. So, there are all kinds of things that people can do, and whether they're living in a city or they're living in outside the city or wherever they are, that being more conscious of their impact and their relationship to the world around them and all the other forms of life around them. I think children very often are naturally inclined to be curious and interested. I remember my second daughter, when she was a little girl, we lived in the country, and she was outside on a spring day and looking, just running around having a good time. Suddenly she spotted in the lawn a dandelion, this incredibly bright, beautiful flower just there, and she had never seen it before. And so I watched her. She, scooched down and was talking to the dandelion and telling it, I don't know why. And then she decided to pick it and come and show it to me because she was so excited. And I saw this whole drama working out. But it was lovely because it was an adventure for her, and she was, really relating. And she's very much relating to the world anyway. That's how she's been, but how she's developed. But that kind of thing, that children are so curious, and they very open to the different parts of life. So I think that we can encourage children and young people to explore more deeply whatever it is that they are curious about or that they discover in life that has to do with the environment.
Thank you so much, Jane. It was great.
Well, it was a great pleasure.
Awesome.